a component and how we can minimize how we can make a efficient React application. So that's the one thing that I want.
Okay, got it.
Yep,
Cool. I
noted
think
down.
Thanks.
awesome. Nice. I'll quickly get Akshay also, and then I think we should be live right now. Yeah, Akshay, quick intro from your end.
Yeah. Hi, Chirag.
Cool. Live.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yeah, Akshay, you're audible.
Hey, Akshay. Yeah, good.
Chirag, my doubt is front end as a career, is it enough? Sometimes it feels lighter. For example, for front end system design, right? There are concepts, but mostly people expect the LLD from back end perspective. Whenever I gave interviews, they kind of expect me to give some DB models, uh, relationship schemas, how system communicate with each other. Like why are we choosing, uh, uh, let's say, some X messenger queue over Y. Like it's not very front end heavy, I feel, and sometimes I feel that I should become a full stack developer and not just a front end. So in that scope, if you could share some light.
Definitely, Akshay. I've noted that point and I'm going to talk about this. Maybe I will take the time at the end to get into the detail because there is a lot of myth in the industry and there are a lot of correction has to be done where people have start learning what is the right thing that has to be done. So eventually I'm going to cover this in depth in the last of the session at the
Got
last.
it.
Sounds good?
Got it.
Awesome. Thanks, Akshay. Thanks. Really
Okay.
appreciate. I think Chirag now has a food for thought way before we start the webinars. So we are also live. Sorry, guys. A very good evening, and extremely apologetic for the fact that we had a delay. We had a minor glitch. So first of all, thanks a lot for joining us for another interesting webinar today. And I'm pretty sure that there'll be a lot of learning, and predominantly now that we have good questions already thrown at Chirag, I think the next one hour will be extremely enriching. I wanted to take that liberty to quickly introduce a little bit about Rebase as well as a little bit about what we and what Chirag has been doing as an individual, and along with that, give you a quick idea of what to expect in the sessions. So, giving you a background, a little bit about Rebase. I think we've now had our 2,500 people odd community. We've grown with this rate almost in a year's time. So it's been really, really, really big support from folks like Chirag to really come in and really help us build that and really have the purpose that we're trying to ultimately build is get the right people, speak the right way, and connect with the right people and find answers to what they can really do in days to come in the industry at large. Moving on with respect to some of the mentors that we have alongside Chirag, we have Saurav, we have Ashish, we have Vikas, and these folks really spend a lot of time in our community and with folks giving them extreme detailed guidance about their career and also explaining them what impact. Because now earlier, since I come from a marketing major background, though engineer in life, but still I now something that I really see great across from these folks is the ability to explain people why networking seems to be a big important aspect, and they, to be honest, lead it right from the front, and you get these accesses of these wonderful mentors right in the community. Obviously, they today impact products that are used by zillions, and I think that's been one of the highlights that we have got from the ecosystem overall. Moving on, we also do conduct regular Dev Jam, wherein you ensure that we are there nearby you. So we've done it across Calcutta, Jaipur, Bangalore, Chandigarh, and so in case if you feel that we should do in your city, please feel free to reach out to us or ping us in the comments. Now, then ultimately the only call once you have this session, the request join us at Discord. We're there active in Discord, and I still feel it's a platform that you might be using day in and day out. So you can add another channel, experiment, and learn what Rebase and overall this community is trying to do. Moving on, a little bit about Chirag and who's the man right now, whose teams. So Chirag has more than 10 years of experience across some of the well-known organizations that we use in our daily lives, such as Microsoft, Flipkart, and apart from that, he is a well-known blogger, YouTuber, and teaches entrepreneur as well. He's been part of a creator of Chakti system design. So that's something, and I assume Chirag can easily be approached on LinkedIn. While we've given you a link, you can easily type Chirag and you'll get with a keyword like Microsoft, you definitely will land onto his profile. So this is a little bit about us and Chirag. So over to you, Chirag, to take it up from here. You're on mute, brother. You're on mute.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for basically giving a quick introduction about myself. And definitely the Recro is doing a great job in order to help people to connect, especially the developer, and come on the same stage basically to do a lot of other things, not just the dev, right? So great. So let me quickly share my screen and we'll get started without wasting much time. Okay. So uh, a small quick, okay, I'll just give me a moment. Let me ensure that I have a chat along with me so that I don't miss any thing coming from the people. Great. So a quick introduction, as you have already given, is just that my handle is Engineer Chirag. So you can reach me out on the LinkedIn, on YouTube, or anywhere. Basically, it's the same Engineer Chirag. So I have Medium and everywhere. So I create content basically on front end, on full stack. I create content on system design. So as Jan was talking about, I am a creator of Check the System Design. So this is the series which is related to the front-end system design precisely. And like Akshay was asking about the LLD and HLD part of it, people have a lot of myth and whatnot. I will recommend, if you have not gone through this series, please go through it. And people have started rectifying the kind of expectation they have in the interviews from nowadays. Great. With that, let's quickly talk about what is the today's agenda altogether. We are here to understand there is something crazy going on, which is called React Server Component, right? Everyone is talking about, oh, there is React Server Component, something cool came into the picture. Before I will jump into React Server Component, we get into do some hands-on kind of thing. I wanted to help you to understand everyone who is watching me. I know there are multiple places people are watching. So there are few things we have to understand. How this all sort of app development have grown through in from the, you can say, 2 decades to the 2023 probably, right? So there are multiple things has been done. So before we jump into any of these, I just wanted to know, what was your first tech stack or programming language basically which helped you to create your web app? Like, feel free to comment down wherever, whichever platform you are on. Please comment down which was your first tech stack you used in order to create your first web app. Anything that comes to your mind. It can be any damn thing. Oh, I used PHP probably. There will be people who use maybe Java, maybe Spring Boot or any such thing in order to build. So please feel free to comment that. What was the first one, guys, on the Zoom as well? Please feel free to do that. Quick. Let's see how many of you have developed, how old you are, or I can say how much experienced you are. Probably that will make more sense. Okay, I see people talking about multiple stuff. Like people have worked on jQuery also. There are people who have worked on Laravel, PHP kind of, Magento, WordPress kind of, you can say frameworks and languages basically in order to build the application. That's crazy. Now, let's understand what are the different ways that we have seen application can be developed, or what are the strategies to render the application. So what we are going to talk majorly today, how the websites used to render in today's era. What are the possible options of rendering? So when we say render, so there are multiple ways things can render. What are those? One, you have a server and you have a client. So before I jump into that, I can show you something. You have two places where the rendering can happen. So you have something called client and you have something called server. Either of these, your rendering is going to happen. And what you need ultimately on the client in order to show any application, ultimately you need something called HTML and CSS in order to show you a beautiful website. And in order to add an interactivity, you need extra JavaScript on top of it. Ultimately, your browser needs this. So two part, which is you need HTML, CSS in order to show look and feel. Second is you need JavaScript in order to provide the interactivity to the application which is getting rendered. Now, who does rendering, who provides this HTML, CSS, JavaScript is something which is important, because nowadays what we do, we use different programming, we use different frameworks, we do multiple kind of things. Like earlier days, we used to use PHP. Earlier days, we have done a lot of things in case of Python also, Java also, right? We have used so many things. Now, where the rendering basically is happening. Depending on the framework, it used to choose either the rendering will happen on the server or the rendering will happen on the client. So many things have evolved over the period of time. Now, ultimately, something is going to happen on the client in order to convert maybe your React app into your HTML, CSS, JavaScript, or something will happen on the server to convert your code into HTML, CSS, JavaScript and provide it to the client, which is your browser, right? That has to be done. So how happen, where happen, what can be done, something has to be thought through. So overall, we have two strategies that we have seen, which is on two front, which is called either you do things on the client or you do things on the server. Now, when we do anything on the client, what do we call, guys? Come on. It's like when we do rendering on the client, what do we call it? I hope you guys are champ on that and you have built a lot of application on that. When we talk about React or Angular, Vue.js, where the rendering is actually happening in such cases. So we have
client side. So
client
you can
side
see the
rendering.
Q&A. Yeah, you can see the Q&A. People are responding on that.
Okay, I think that's a better one. Okay, awesome. This is better. Perfect. So basically we have client side rendering. Awesome. Now on the server, basically we have server side rendering, but it contains multiple part. What we call on server, we have done multiple strategies to improve our rendering, which could happen on the server. We call it two terms. One is called basically server side rendering, no doubt, which we side rendering, which we were doing from a long time, like more than 2 decades from the time the internet have evolved, where the application have evolved. We have done lot of server side rendering. You take Python based application, you take PHP based application, WordPress and whatnot. Lot of these applications have been doing server side rendering, where server gives you final HTML, CSS, JavaScript that need to be used on the client and which is on the browser, and it does the interactivity and provide you all the content. Now, with that, there was few more things which have evolved. What was that? There is a new thing which came into the picture on the server, which was your SSG. So what we call basically, we have SSG, which is you have static site rendering basically on the server. So we started with static site rendering. What it meant by, consider example, if you know you have a blog, you have an article. This article is once written, it is not going to change. What do? So you create that page at some time, basically you create and convert into HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Like, so that you don't, every time your server don't have to process it. No need to process it again and again and again and again. So that is how basically things started evolving. Now, everything has some pros and cons. When we talk about you do something on the client, you do something on the server. On the server, you do the dynamic update and you do something static update. So basically, this. If I have to clearly mention, this is called dynamic update. When things can change, like the things which can be dependent on your data, user data and whatnot, those things comes on the dynamic update, and this is something which we have static updates basically we call. Once created, it's not going to change that often. Basically, that is what the static update is. Now we have client, we have server. Now I just wanted to know the opinion of folks over here. To you, which one is better? People over here, what do you think? Like, for you might have some perspective already, right? You might have gone through a lot of stuff. To you, what is better, client side rendering or server side rendering? Put in the comment, let me see what's your thought. Okay, some people are saying client side rendering, some people are saying server side rendering. I wanted to hear more. Anyone with any justification, probably. Why do you think your client side rendering is better or the server side rendering is better? Like, there should be some parameters based on that we decide, we judge basically which one to choose or which one will be better and whatnot, right? Someone is saying the SSR is better. Some people are smart enough saying that it depends what you wanted to do. Depending on some business use cases, people are smart enough. Chalo. We will do a bit of comparison before even I jump into React server component and why it actually came into the picture. Understanding of fundamental things are very, very important over here. So we talked about three kind of high level rendering that we have. So we have this CSR, we have something called SSG, and we have something called like SSR, which is server side rendering altogether. There are many parameters which we will try to evaluate these things. First thing first, if we talk about where the actual rendering happens. So if I have to say where is the actually rendering happens in this particular case, in case of client side rendering, guys, where the rendering happens, like who converts and provide final HTML, CSS, JavaScript to the browser that need to be rendered? Who converts into HTML, CSS, JavaScript? Because that is the under the hood backbone of like any application to render. So who converts that? A quick one. Either it is done on the server, it is done on the client, where it is done, where the conversion of where your processing of your HTML, CSS, JavaScript is done. So your rendering happens on your rendering. Actually, who converts is your browser, which is client in this particular case, right? Which is perfect. Now, in case of SSG, basically, where the actually conversion into HTML, CSS, JavaScript happen. This is very interesting. It happens on the server, but it happens at the build time. At build time, what it meant by, when you are actually generating your application, when you're saying, okay, these are the things that basically that need to be shipped, what happens in that particular case? All of these things are basically converted into your HTML, CSS, JavaScript at that moment, and that is how basically that works. Perfect. Now coming back, in case of when I was talking about SSG, very important thing is, because these articles are not going to change, because this content is not going to change. Once created, this content, it will be there, it is going to be surviving over there. What is done? These static pages are generated, so these static pages are served on the demand. Now in case of SSR, which is we call it server side rendering, what happens in this case? Who provides your HTML, CSS, JavaScript is on the server. Your server basically says, okay, I am going to provide you HTML, CSS, JavaScript on demand. Example, when I say on demand, you may be looking for, give me the list of all the activities that I have done. Yeah, you give me all the blocks basically which are written by me. So what this page or this list is basically going to return? This is going to return you something which is relevant to the user, something which is dynamic. This dynamic processing is happen on the server, including the API call has to be made in order to fetch the database, connectivity, getting it, putting into the component, it may be React component, getting and converting it into HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and shipping to the browser. Everything that we talked about actually happens on the server, on the demand, basically in case of which we call server-side rendering, complete server-side rendering. Now, what we get, there are many things. So obviously things have pros and cons, things have some benefit, as we said. In case of initial, if we talk about the initial load, in case of client side, it's slower. Why it's slower? Because you get HTML, CSS, JavaScript, maybe your React and whatnot. And finally, on the client, someone is actually, your framework, which is React, is actually trying to convert your code into the interactive code and generate the HTML, CSS, JavaScript by printing and doing a lot of stuff on the client. So JavaScript has to do a lot of heavy lifting in such case. And eventually when your application grows, you have to also download a lot of JavaScript on the client in order to make your application work. And that we have seen almost in all the React based or Angular Vue based application over the period of time. Now, in case of static generation, this is very fast. It is comparatively very faster. Reason being, I will say, reason being, because everything is already generated. You are saying, boss, give me this page. And it says that all the API requests, the content inside that particular page, everything was punched at the time of build itself. It says, I have HTML, CSS, JavaScript ready, you take it. And your job is done. In case of SSR, mostly it is faster. When I'm saying mostly, because I will show you, there are places where it stucks. When I say stucks, it is worst probably than your CSR also sometimes. It can be very horrible in many of such cases. I will show you some examples probably of those. So things has to be taken care, as people are talking about, depending on use cases, depending on certain things that has to be taken care of. Most of the time SSR is powerful for dynamic content, but you can't opt it blindly, because whenever you do something blindly, oh, React is good, everyone started using React. Angular is good or Vue is good, everyone started using that. That creates a problem without thinking about your use cases. That brings the problem. Now, in terms of SEO, a quick one, as people know, this is not a good typical. There is so much effort. So I will say a lot of effort is required. This is good, no doubt. This is And this is also good for SEO purpose. Both of these, you can use static or the dynamic. You can say static generation or dynamic generation. Both are good for your SEO purpose. But on the client side rendering, you can do, you can say SEO kind of thing. Browsers do support nowadays, modern browser client side rendering SEO, but it need effort. It takes lot of effort, and there are still many browsers basically which does not, or search engine which does not do the justice to this. Okay, so that brings to a lot of interesting. There are many such things I can keep on talking. If you talk about user interaction, so in case of user interaction, the overall time basically to make the things interactive basically in this case is basically which is high. So the user interaction, or I can say in terms of like first load takes a compromise and better in the upcoming, you can say events that happen. So I can say high in first load, after it's better after that. This is something which is great in such cases. Now, if you talk about SSG, it's faster, it's a better reason. You get everything done on the server itself. And if we talk about user interaction, comparatively in this case is slightly slower. So when I say slightly slower, because the first interaction that happens, things has to be loaded, certain things has to be done. But comparatively, if you talk about, it is still better than CSR. Slightly slower as compared to static pages, but it's still better than, you can say, the client-side rendering that we have. If you talk about development complexity, there are many things basically I can keep on talking about. I will give you few small examples probably that make more sense. If we have to talk about hosting kind of thing, in case of CSR, you can have a static server. You don't need anything very fancy kind of, you don't need anything. Even static, I can say you can have just CDN to serve your asset, your job is done. You just have CDN, your job is done. In case of, you can say static site generation, again, you can have a static server, or you can say any kind of CDN where you don't need any damn thing. Just those assets, JavaScript, HTML, CSS is required, your job is done. In case of SSR, you need a proper server in order to handle the dynamic requests which are coming. It can't be CDN. It has to be proper server, because your request has to process, your request has to make a database call, server calls, do a lot of stuff on the server basically in order to achieve to this particular stage. That is all such thing happen in such cases. Now we talked about, okay, this is hosting is good, we understood. Let's talk about some of the frameworks which provides these capabilities, so that if you are looking for, if you wanted to explore certain things, you can. Static side, which you can say, or client side rendering, we all know. We have Angular, we have Vue, and how can we forget React in such case, right? So all of these basically provides you can have client side rendering, especially when we say client side rendering, that comes to our mind, which is SPA, single page application. In the first load, you give me all the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, all the navigations on the page are going to happen inside. Like inside, when I meant by, it is going to happen on the client. There is no server round trip in order to ask for any sort of rendering and whatnot. Now, with that, there are frameworks. If I have to talk about in case of static site generation, we have something called Next.js, which is very much popular. Then we have Next.js also. One of the popular basically is Gatsby. Gatsby is again got very much popular in order to generate your static site. If you are not aware, please go and look forward. It is very powerful. Now, similarly, for static site generation and dynamic site generation, Next.js is very powerful. You can use Next.js or Next.js, both of them, both are powerful. This is something which it is outgrowing. So we will be doing a lot of examples using this Next.js in our case in order to understand multiple perspective of that. Now, there are many use cases we can talk about. Anything which is a static site, like we want single page application, please use CSR. If I have to talk about, if you have single page application that need to be built, CSR is one of the great example that can be taken, can be leveraged. If your website is focused on the content, like blogging website, anything which is hardly going to change, the static site generation is something which is awesome. Now, anything which is going to update very frequently, you need data dynamically. It can be your data. Examples like most of the comment, like content based things, or when I say content, like social media platform, like your LinkedIn, we have, right? We have your Facebook kind of thing. Those kind of platform basically are better for, you can say, server side rendering kind of stuff. Now, life is not that simple, guys. As we always say, we had something combination of where we can decide things can happen on the client, things can happen on the server, things can happen at the time of build time in case of this, right? But all of these comes for a toss. All of these come for a toss, and we will see some of the examples probably, and we'll see like why I'm saying the things comes for a toss when you opt for client side rendering, server side rendering, or static side generation. Everything has some cost that has to be beared, and we will talk about that. Great. Okay, so I hope everyone is with me till this point. You are with me, guys, right? So how many of you want me to get into code and show me the code, and let's do dive into the code and see how all these three basically things works, and also analyze how you can check in the developer tool or probably in the application to identify how do I get to know certain things is happening on the client, on the server, which is one is the static side generation. How do I assess which has the better performance and whatnot? I will give you some glimpses around that so that it make more sense to you guys. Great. So with that, let's start diving into a lot of other content that I have. So I have an example. I'm going to use Next.js for our demo purpose. If you are not aware about the Next.js, please go and look for Next.js. There is an official website of Next.js. This is very cool. It has a great documentation also. So it has two part, guys. It has using app. It has using app router, which is a new way to develop the application, which we will be talking again. And there is another way which is called page-based router, like pages router, where Next.js was everything talking about how do you have static side generation, client side rendering, and whatnot using this page router. So we have examples standing for both of them using the pages routing and using the app routing. Their differences, what we get and whatnot, we will have those things. If you don't know Next.js, don't worry. This is nothing to go specific with the Next.js. I'm using Next.js to do this client side, server side, static side generation as one of the medium. These concepts are not limited to Next.js anyhow, but it provides a good way, good medium to show and basically achieve all those kind of rendering in a faster way. So that is what we will try it out. So we have something called setup, which is page router, in which I have one page. So we'll see what this page is. I have created inside pages, I have created a page which is called you can say SCR, the client side rendering. So in client side rendering, again, if I have to highlight what it does nothing special. It has a component. It has a component, forget about the component. It has a component which basically list the all the tutorials that we have. So it will list the all the tutorials, all the basically platform where you can have good tutorials kind of thing. It wanted to list that. So now as a React developer, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? The first thing that comes to your mind, okay, I need to render some list of component, a list of tutorial. Now these tutorial has to be fetched from API. Now API comes to the picture and we are talking about React. The other things that comes to your mind, where shall we make a call for the API in order to get the data? What do you think, guys? Come on, put in the comments. Put in the comments so that I know you guys are good at React. You know fundamentals of React. You have to get the tutorials basically. How do you make a tutorial? How you will fetch the tutorial? Where you will fetch the tutorial is interesting. You need a REST API call or whichever API call in order to do that. But what you are going to do? You're going to make a API call. How? Probably most of the people, as you said correctly, you are going to do using on mount of the component, you will use something called use effect, which is awesome. You will use some use effect, and on the mount of your application, you will make a fetch call. Using that fetch call, you will get the data. Once you get the data, you will put that data into your state. And this is your state. As the state changes, eventually, what you will have your component to render over here. So you have videos, and this videos is going to render your component again with the list of new data that you got. Awesome. This is how we have learned our React. This is how basically we build things. Now we are going to see what happens in such case. I'm going to run my server npm Run dev. I hope I'm in a page router. Great. So we have something called our application running on localhost 3000. We'll go over there. We'll open this application and we'll see what happened. So on this, I have created a route which is called CSR page. This is my route where my CSR rendering will happen. Great. So I can show you basically one thing. If people know Next.js a bit, you can see inside pages, I have created a page which is called CSR page.json, which is responsible to render this particular thing. So I'm going to close this dev tool for now so that we can focus on the code over here. What we got, let's try to analyze from the browser. We'll see the first request and we'll see the subsequent request which actually went. So the first thing first, we'll go to all. In the all, we will see there is a request which went to give me the page content, which is give me the code of the CSR. What basically we got? We got a page which is a HTML page. Inside this, there are many scripts that are injected. There are many scripts that are injected. There are some polyfill, webpack, and whatnot. There are some other scripts basically which are injected. There are some chunks related to refresh, which we are not interested in. But all the content that we need, you see, there is something called main page, pages, there is something called webpack. These are a couple of bundles. In this case, you see there is a bundle for our CSR page, which we created. What it said server actually responded with a HTML static page, where the page that we created is the static page which was given to us. Said, oh, this is the JavaScript code in order to render that particular page. You take that JavaScript, you do whatever you want to do on the client. I don't care. Server said, I'm giving you entire HTML, CSS, JavaScript, all the dependencies which are needed in order to render the page. You go, you render on the client and decide whatever you wanted to do. Now, what we wanted to do in this particular case, we wanted to make a API call, get the tutorial, get the data, and finally put that into our application. It does exactly same. So it loaded all the JavaScript and whatnot you needed to render your application. When it rendered your application, it found out, oh, there is an API call that need to be made at the time of a mount. Okay, it said, okay, I can do that. So what it did, it made an API call which is called tutorial, and it got the data. Once it got the data, what it has to do, it will update into your, you can say state, and finally your rendering will happen with the respective data. Now, in this case, guys, we have to understand what happened. In this case, what happened basically over here. The interesting part which happened over here was your server send you HTML, CSS, JavaScript, all the dependencies, you loaded the dependencies, you loaded all the data which was required, and finally you are able to render. Which kind of rendering it is, guys? This is your client-side rendering, because all the rendering, all the dependencies resolution, everything that was required in order to build this page, the final the final HTML which was required in order to render this page is something which is decided and created by your client. This is client-side rendering. We'll show you something important so that you can compare it well before I jump into, you can say, SSR kind of like React component and whatnot. A quick one, the first page, if you have to see, it took around 25 millisecond and basically some data basically that we got. And then there was multiple dependencies that has to be resolved. Eventually, multiple other network call went in order to give me the data, give me data. It said that, okay, let me give you data. And finally, some request went for in order to get your API call as well. So in total, if you see, multiple round trips have happened. In total, a good amount of time it took in order to render this particular page, because all of these dependencies was something critical in order to render this page. This is awesome. This is good. Now, because there are multiple round trip, the overall time taken in order to render this page was huge comparatively, right? I'm not going into the performance and whatnot in order to show you what is the first page load and the time to interactivity in this case, but it is very high, which you can see from multiple round trips which are happening. Now, what is the other option that we have, guys? What are the other option that we have? We should try it out. What do you think? What is the other option? We have something called static site generation. So inside static site generation that we have, let's try to do. So static side, on the server side, we have two things, either the dynamic and second is the static. Static says that you do anything that you wanted to do. Exactly, we will see. In this case, there's the same stuff, which is it says that, boss, I have to render my videos, my tutorial, and tutorial is a component which just iterate through the list and renders. Nothing special in the tutorial. Now, what you need list of videos. In this case, what we do in both the cases of server side, ultimately we need to pass these videos as an props to the main component that need to be rendered. Who is going to pass as in props defines either you are going to be static side generation or the dynamic side generation. What it meant by? It meant by you, now in case of Next.js, it simply says you, I am going to give you static side generation capabilities out of box. You have to follow some standard. What is that the standard? It says any of your component, if uses a method which is called get static props, in that you can do any damn thing. You can do any async operation, make API call, make DB connection. You put anything. You can put your password, secret keys, any damn thing over here. I am going to use it. I am going to compute this on the server. Whatever is the output of this, I am going to put it back into my videos over here as in props to your component. So this is something which is 100% going to be computed on the server at the time of build. Most important. We are talking about static side generation. It happens at the time of build. Once it is generated, it will, at the time of build, it will make API call, get the data, compute it, finally put the things into this. Finally, this will convert into HTML. You have your final HTML, CSS, JavaScript getting converted by making all of these activity at the build time itself, and you have everything ready. Now, how can we see that and how we can see the benefit in such case? Let's see. Just using this props is going to make your site available at the build time. So I'm going to basically get into the same, just that I'm going to first run npm run build, where I'm saying, okay, build my application. So it is going to build. It says that, okay, I'm generating some pages. It says that, okay, I generated some static pages. It says that, oh, these are the pages. Out of these, there are some static side pages. It says that, oh, it took me more than 3 seconds in order to generate this. It's finally generated and it is ready. Now, what we have to do, I have to just run npm run. Where's that? Let me write it again. npm run start. What it does, a quick one. So it actually, again, the server is up. We'll go to our application. We'll quickly see that what happened in this case. I'm going to say SSG page. Or let me open over here, guys, so that you can compare it well, both of them. So I have SSG page. I hope folks might have noticed the page loaded like blink of eye. Like I'm going to reload this page again and hard reload so that you can see it well. Guys, did you see how much time it took in order to render this page? It took me to render this page, like to get the first page, which is your 7 ms. Within 7 ms, what you got, an interesting thing is it is. So you got a page over here. And did you see your page have all the static HTML? It says that tutorial first list contains learn front-end system design full course, right? It says all the API data, pulling that data, converting into HTML. All of these was done at the time of build itself. When we made the request to the server, it says that, oh, that file is already there. That is already computed. Let me just give you back right away. And you got that right away. What hardly need to be done is just that if there was some JavaScript and whatnot, that has to be hydrated in such case. So make it fully interactive. Basically, that has to be done. So you see, there is no API call which went in order to get the tutorial and whatnot, because that was done at the build time. How many of you feel for cases where you have blocks or anything that is static pages, which is not going to change, this strategy is very powerful? How many of you feel that, guys? A quick one, a quick thumbs up, something. So show something on the comments chat so that I get to know. You see the one which you saw the previous one and the one which you saw over here. So it took 25 ms just to get first initial, then multiple round trip, then making a API call. Like you see the time took to get this API call was just 10 ms, like itself was 10 ms. But in this case, if you see, it was 7 ms to get everything. Your entire API call, everything getting resolved because the bundle was already created. Your page was created at the time of the build itself. Now, bringing another perspective. This works well when, consider example, our pages, the content of this tutorial is not going to change. What if it was dependent on user? What is it needs some dynamic parameters based on that this has to be fetched. I cannot do this at the build time because at the build time, I don't know what is the perspective basically that we have. What are the different content we want, because that content can change over the period of time as well, right? Now, such case, what we are going to do, anything like you have feeds, your news feeds, any kind of feed, you have content blocks, basically, like social media post coming into the picture, things keep on changing very frequently. Now, what you have another option. Let's quickly go through that also, which is called server-side rendering. Exactly same. So you have same component, same way to get the props, same component definition, nothing changed. Only one thing getting changed is instead of using this static props, we are using something called get server side props. What it says, I am going to call this method on the server, whatever you write, going to compute that on the server, and finally going to return you back this particular content which I get over here, and you do all the kind of hydration and whatnot on the client. What it meant by, it says, whenever you request, I'm going to do similar kind of thing that I did in static site generation. Is just that whenever your request come, then I will start processing whatever you ask me. Make a DB call, make me API call. I will do that. I will convert into final HTML, CSS, JavaScript and give you back. Now, once you get HTML, CSS, JavaScript, you do your hydration of making your page interactive and whatnot, and your page will be visible and interactive very fast. That it says. Now, let's do this part, which where I'm going to kill this and run in a npm. Okay. And clear it up and run npm run dev. Okay, so coming back to our application, and this application is basically local host. We have SSR page, And if I open this, we will see, guys, how much time it took. So go to network. I'm waiting. So I will show you maybe in fresh tab. Try to notice, guys, what is going to happen in this. Okay, so I will go to network. See, I'm pasting. I hit enter. It is loading. My request is there in flight. It waited for some time in order to get the response. First, we will see the response. Then we'll see what happened in terms of time and whatnot. The response is exactly similar to what you got in static site generation, where your all the API call, data processed, and finally getting your HTML, CSS, JavaScript, getting bundled back and getting you return the final outcome you get in the similar fashion. Such that because it made the API call on the server on the demand, when I said, give me this page, it actually went into this function, which is my this function, and basically it computed all of these things. Now, the tricky thing that happened in this case is, saying that, boss, you get the API call. What I did a trick. I added some waiting period before it start making API call. Why I did it? Consider you did some complex operation inside this function, which actually took some time, maybe some DB call, some complex thing, making multiple API call. Although the SSR is good, like if I remove this, if I just simply go and comment it, the time taken is just to get the simple API call and render it. If that was the only case, let's reload. Right now, it took around how much? It took us 3 point some second, because 3 seconds is some complex processing time and few seconds to get the API. But when I removed it, do you see how much time it took? Just 41 second, 41 ms basically, in order to get this page rendered. But this could be a problem when you have some complex operations being done. Same thing, same could do worst, because you won't be see anything on the application. Your application will be blank, and you have to wait for that particular complex operation to be completed in order to get even the first byte on your browser in order to see any damn thing. Now, it has two-way sword, because it can benefit you also. It can give you degrade performance if you don't handle things properly. That's why we say you can't use a single bullet basically for all the solutions, right? So now probably you can see the pros and cons of things that we have seen, like client-side rendering, you have static side generation, server-side rendering. All of these are good in one way or the other, but these things comes with a complications, especially the complication that happened is I wanted to process something on the server because it is a dynamic. It's not client. I wanted to do on the server, but I don't want everything to happen on the server. Can some part of it can happen on the server, and the complex operation probably, which I feel can be done in a lazy fashion on the client itself, so that I have a combination of both of these. Like, can this be feasible? Is that possible altogether? And with that question, the concept of your React server component came into the picture, which said, boss, you don't have to even think about rendering your entire page either on the server or the client. There is a better way. Instead of talking about rendering at pages level, let's talk about rendering at component level. Now, what it meant by the earlier decision that was taken about, say, suppose this is my main page and there are multiple such component we had, right? Such component that we had earlier, this was some case example. Now, in case of client-side rendering, server-side rendering, and static-side generation, the problem was, if this is my page, that is, the decision has to be taken at a page level most of the time, where, boss, you tell me, like, if this entire tree has to be done on the client or the server, at the build time on the server or at the dynamic level, you decided. Now, React server component says that no. This is not scalable, and we have seen a lot of challenges basically over the period of time where people wanted to do something in a combination. Why we are restricting things at page level? Can we go at a component level and derive this? And that's brought something interesting. Now, in this case, you can take a decision. All of my stuff are going to go on the server, but these are two things I wanted to render on the client. Rest, all the things will happen on the server, because I want, oh, these are things which can be taken on the client side. That brings to a next level power. And if we have to see how this next level power basically you get, it's very simple. The way Next.js has provided us that power, the beauty of this, it gives us the next level. So first, even I jump into and showcase you the demo for this, I just wanted to talk about what benefit basically we get in such cases. So if I talk about some of the benefit that we are going to get, because you understood in terms of high level concept, I hope you will understand the benefits also before I show you the code. The first benefit that you see, you still have flexibility where you wanted to fetch the data. Do you wanted to fetch the data on the client? You wanted to fetch the data on the server? You still have flexibility. Now, with that flexibility, most of the complex data fetching logic that you wanted to do can still be passed to the server to avoid this round trip kind of stuff that can be done. So those kind of beauty, you get better data fetching mechanism, control to fetch the data on the server, pass the complexity to the server whenever needed. The other thing basically that comes in terms of the security also. What it says, boss, because you may not have entire page as something that has to be taken as in terms of the security concerns. There are some components, there are some places where you wanted to make a DB call where it has secret key of the DB. There are places where you wanted to do third party connectivity. You wanted to use some connectors. You wanted to use some secret and something on basically in order to get the data and process the component. You can do a strategy. Such component can always be processed on the server where nothing is leaked on the client. So you are chilled. You don't have to think about, oh, when I'm making an API call, my tokens can be leaked, my personal information can be leaked. You don't have to worry about, because it says that I can take it care. Now, along with that, it says that, boss, even I am doing this server side rendering of the component, I still provide you a lot of mechanism to provide you better caching strategy. Once a component is rendered on the server, next time if you want to give from the cache, I can do that. That's a beauty. In this case, it says that the bundle size that you will see is comparatively very less, because I will only ship the relevant bundle when you want things to be done something on the client. If you are doing maximum part on the server, I'm not going to give you entire bundle. I'm going to process those things on the server, give you the HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Whenever you say, I want this component to be rendered on the client, I will just pass the bundle to the browser and say that, okay, for these green stuff, you take care things on the client side. That's a beauty which gets. If I talk about initial page load is much faster. Why? It says because the first byte, the first set of content which is coming from the server, and that can be bare minimum very efficient thing that is coming from the server. Some of the things which you want to do on the client, you can still do it, not a problem. Just that the first thing which is required by browser in order to show you something as soon as possible can be done on a very faster rate, and that because you have control on every component that is getting rendered. Now if I talk about SEO is better because your shell is still coming from the server, where your shell can give you all the relevant metadata and descriptions, all the open graph stuff which is required for the social media sharing and whatnot. That can be done at that level. That's a beauty. Ultimately, what it provides a next level thing, which is it provides a streaming. What it meant by it says, I am going to process components on the server, but don't worry, I'm not similar to like server side rendering. I'm different. Why? As soon as I am processing the component, I will stream it on the client. I won't wait for entire component tree to be rendered so that I can give you in one shot. I will keep on processing. I will keep on giving you in a my payload structure, which is different than normal structure that I've seen. Not going into those technical detail. It will give you those information and says that, boss, as you keep getting HTML, CSS, JavaScript on the client, you start hydrating using, you can say, your JavaScript, putting into your HTML, making your browser interactive. You can start making your components and the part of your application interactive without waiting for entire tree to be basically resolved. That brings the next level beauty. And one important thing which I wanted to highlight, by default it says, I am going to make all the component to be server component, or you can say server rendered. By default, if you don't configure or make some changes, I'm going to consider everything is going to be server component, which meant by these greens are also going to be on the server explicitly until you mark, I wanted to do render these things on the client. Now, the question comes, what helps me to decide what should be done on the client, what should be done on the server? If everything can be done on the server and can be streamed, what's the problem? I can blindly ask, do everything on the server and keep on streaming. But there are complications. There are gocha where you can't put everything on the server because there are many things that has to be done on the client. And what are those? We will talk about that. Before we jump into that, let me show you a quick demo around React Server component, and we'll see the differences and the beauty. Okay, so we have, for that, I have created another folder which is called the app router, which has relevant configurations. So before I jump into the app router, just guys, show some energy. Are you with me? A quick check. It will take hardly 5-10 minutes more. Just be with me, just 10 minutes more, and a lot of crazy stuff to showcase. Awesome. You guys are great. I see a lot of love going around. Okay, so I will just go into our app router, and lot of, as I'm saying, there are multiple things which are under the hood, which are abstracted by Next.js. I'm not going to talk about the internal, how these things are provided, because that's not the agenda of today's at all. So I'm showing you how you can build things and how you can leverage things. That's the beauty that I wanted to highlight. Now, with that, I will go into the app router. Same component that we have created, going to see over here. You go to SRC. Inside SRC, we have created a page which is called SRC page. And what it does, similar kind of thing. Again, you have same component, just that it does not take as in props. Just that the new way of doing it in the React server component, it does not take as in props. It says that please have a async function. And please make a API call in that async function. You have any damn promise, you make a directly call, you get this async passed over here, and I will ensure that everything basically happens on the server. I make the fetch call, get the data, and basically start streaming over here. That is what it says. And I have another component which is called tutorial. And this tutorial is nothing. It's just that a single widget that you see is getting rendered. The individual li that you see, the image and basic title and whatnot. Those are some basic information that we have. Awesome. So this is what we had. This is what we have. Coming back, where we were. Okay, so we have this page. Now, let's run this and see. We are in app server, I hope. npm run dev. What beauty are you going to bring, man? Let's see what beauty this brings. Oh, yeah. Okay, coming back over here. So going to say this is React server component page. That's what we have. Before I even hit that, we'll quickly open the network tab, and basically hit the enter. So you will see what we got. We got the page. And interesting thing, if someone notice, you got simmer kind of thing where certain things were rendered to you. You don't have, okay, try to notice, guys. So you can have, although this simmer kind of thing can be done on other places also, but you got the first cut things rendered very fast. And as it keep on getting more data, it keep on streaming the data, if we see, right? Now, what in such case, if you see what we get as an outcome, interestingly, there is no API call, guys. There is no API call which was made. To highlight, there is no API call which was made because that API call was done on the server itself. The other thing which I wanted to showcase probably in this particular case is what you get over here. What you get over here. Okay, so guys, try to notice what you get over here. The first thing that you get, there is basically a shimmer template basically I'm using, and that shimmer template basically got added over here in order to first cut and ship you as soon as possible to show you something with that, and eventually it started adding lot of stuff on the server. Now, how do I get to know if this rendering happened on the server or on the client? Is there any way? It brings this React server the component have one complexity, which is debugging. I can show you something which make more sense. What I will do, I will write console.log and I will say, where did you render? Boss, can you help me? Where did you render? Did this operation on the client or on the server? Can you help me with that? So I will show you that beauty probably. Let me move it. Oh, how do I move it? Move it up. Okay, this is crazy. There is a bar which is stucking for me. Okay, no worries. I hope that will be better for you. I'm going to reload this. I will go to console and see if it says that where did you render? Don't open this. I don't open. Reload. Okay. So it rendered, but there is no statement which is called where did you render? Where did it went? Where did it went? It went probably something here. You see, guys, where did you render? Where did you render? You render on the server, hence the console.log is coming on the server, not on your browser. Your browser did not show anything. Where did you render? Your where did you render is coming from server. So what it mean? This rendering is happening on the server. Now, interestingly, I go to this tutorial. There is another component. Inside this also, I will write, where did you render? Render, and I will ask render tutorial probably. Where did you render? Tutorial. Let's see where did this tutorial render. So again, so this is sub component basically. So I have a page component. Within page component, I have a tutorial component, and we'll see. So where did you render? Please come. Oh, where did you render? Event did not came over here. So where did it went? Oh, where did you render? Actually rendered on the server. What it meant? The main page that you have and the nested components. Like you have one and you have more tutorial, because multiple tutorial, multiple nodes are there. So at a high level, if you have to see, you have a page and you have multiple such tutorial, right? Tutorial component. All of these, this got rendered on the server. These got also rendered on the server. What if I wanted to take a control and say that, no, 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 all my tutorial has to render on the client and page can render on the server. Shall we do it? How many of you want me to do that, guys? How many of you want me to customize and saying that some part will be rendered on the server and some will be rendered on the client? How many of you want me to do that? Shall we try that out? Everyone in the house. Okay. So guys, be ready. I'm going to make some serious changes. There are multiple lines of code which I'm going to change, and configuration changes which you have to understand. If you don't understand, then it will become very difficult to understand your React server component. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a quote over here saying that use client and save this piece, come to our browser. And did you see, guys, what happened? Where did you render? The tutorial render on the client and the main page basically rendered on the server, if you notice. So that is the other one which is below, basically. Do you see, guys, what you have to do in order to decide what has to be done on the client and what has to be done on the server? By default, as I said, everything is on the server. You wanted to do something rendering on the client. It's just that you wrote use client and it says that, boss, oh, I understood. This is something I have to do on the client. How many of you love that? Like, how many of you love the way basically the beauty basically it provides? Like, amazing, isn't it? Now, the question comes, okay, I can do something on the server and something on the client. How do I decide? Probably what was the issue if I was rendering this on the server? What is the way to judge? Basically, I could have done this on the server or the client. Let me bring an important point for that, which is, guys, please do comment something if you love the way basically you see the server side and the client component basically render and the configuration that you have to do. No damn configuration. It's just one simple small quotes, which is a simple string which says that use client, and you are amazing. Like, you did the amazing work. Now, what brings to these judgment, right? An important thing we have to understand the limitations basically that we have to understand, so that will make more sense. Anything, guys, anything which is related to interactivity, anything which is related, so it is related to, say, suppose hooks like use state, use effect cannot be done on the server component. For any places where you have to use effect, use state kind of thing, you have to do on the client and not on the server. That is one way to judge. The other way to judge is basically anywhere where you have complex data fetching, I will recommend not to do on the server. Reason being, you may end up just waiting for the server reply, where you could have done something better on the client in order to show part of the information, and rest some part of the information could take some time in order to get the data in the REST format that we see, right? That is something which is very important. Now, anywhere where you have to write some use some capabilities basically which are on the client. When I say client, like client side APIs, like web API. Web API, you have to play with local storage, you have to play with the geolocation kind of thing, right? Anything, you have to play with the storage that we have, you have to play with the web APIs that we have. Any of those things, you have to use client side. You can't do on the server side because of the limitations basically that we have. Now, other thing which I wanted to especially mention is, whenever we talk about React, React server component, it is not, as I said, limited to Next.js. It is a concept which is built by React team altogether, saying that this is how things can work partially basically on the server and the client, where Next.js went ahead and basically did an amazing job. But again, it's a bit early stage. So if in short, basically this was, all of these were basically related to the client. So if I have to simplify that, all of these is place where you do things on client, in short. And few things as a highlighter, it's an early stage. People have done amazing work. People are leveraging it. But again, we don't know the issues that you can get in the very huge or big applications. Although people have started leveraging in the production a lot, but still, it's still not 100% that stable as you have other capabilities on the other side, right? So other thing is limited tooling. As I said, sometimes it becomes very difficult. From the network tab, you cannot judge, oh, what got rendered in the client, what got on the render on the side. So something is rendered on the client, something on the server. Debugging comes with a toss. Like, where do you put a debugger? How do you debug if there is a production issue or some issues basically which is coming? Some components are getting here, how the state management is going to happen, how do you visualize certain things, basically that comes with a cost basically. And definitely you need a server, you need proper server configuration, and many processing has to be done on the server. So it comes with a server costing, because each and every component based on the decision user interactivity has to be taken care of. Now, a few things I wanted to talk about. It has learning curve, it has a lot of stuff. But one thing, guys, remember, nothing is a silver bullet. What I meant by, please don't consider you have React server component coming into the picture, so this is going to solve all your problem. Don't think that we have CSR, it is going to solve your problem. You have server side, static side generation or server side rendering kind of thing. One solution can fit to all your need. What you have to think, you have to understand your system, the current state of your system, what could be better done, what could be adopted, and eventually try to go for the best, because there is nothing called perfect. The thing which is perfect today, eventually in some time in near future, that will be deprecated and that no longer will be perfect. Okay, so with that, I hope we have talked so many things. I don't want it to stretch a lot of stuff. I can keep going with all of the discussion. Basically, few things I wanted to check. A quick check on the. Please, guys, comment. I wanted to see if you are with me. A few questions around that. So, if you have to use effect, use state kind of thing, where do you do? Server or client? Please put on the comments. Just quick check. Server or client? Where do you want it to do use effect, use state kind of thing? Server or client? Awesome, awesome. Lot of interesting. If you have to do normal backend accessing, like you have to connect to the database in order to get the data from the DB and whatnot, you will be doing server or client. Where should do the database connectivity to get your data and whatnot? What is better? Those component basically which has database connectivity should do on the server. Perfect. Anywhere you have to use browser API, anything which is web API we call browser API. Do you do on client or server? What is the best place? Client or server? Perfect. Awesome. If you have to find out, like if you have some token, some secret key, some API key, some security related stuff, such thing has to be done on the client or server. Guys, come on. Such thing has to be done client or server. Awesome, server. Now, the last one. If you have to handle some event handling, like on click, on change, on blur kind of thing, such handling should be done on client or server. Client or server. Perfect. So because these are something which you can do on the client, you can't make something interactivity or hydrate things on the server. It has to be hydrated because interactivity and whatnot browser understand, server doesn't understand altogether. Awesome. So with that, I think we had a lovely discussion. I'm all open for any sort of question. I know we stressed a bit, but I hope you guys enjoyed. In case you guys enjoyed a bit and you learned something, please show some loves in the comments or say thumbs up something so that I get to know it was worth your time and I could do some justice.
Awesome, Chirag. I think I'm pretty sure it was the best part. I think you were right on the money, and we really enjoyed the way that you delivered the whole discussion. I think a lot of people commented also that they really enjoying the content as the speaker. So it was a privilege to have you. So I think we can go back to a very important question, I think, which was put across, and people are still raising hands. But one of the questions that came across is majorly whether you need to be a full stack developer versus a front end. What's your take on that?
Okay, so I will tell you how basically industry basically works, that you have to understand. Say suppose even if you become a full stack developer, you know both the part of thing. When you go in companies, most of the time you will get to work on one of the part. Getting items and the work on both the side in big companies is very rare, very rare. In startup, you can get any work. Even in a startup, you can do some marketing work also, hardly matters, right? You may be pitching to the client and doing the sales basically while fixing the bug. Probably that could happen. But when you grow in the company and you go in some bigger product-based companies and whatnot, you are in one side of thing. What I meant, what is important? First, become expert. People who think front end is just about HTML, CSS, JavaScript, you might have got some glimpses today in our session. Like it is not just limited to that. People are talking about the next level stuff. And if you really wanted to learn or understand what the front end capabilities are, so guys, go and check out front end system design, check the system design, just Google it out. You will get a fair understanding of what capabilities it brings. Now, one thing I wanted to tell you, being an expert at one is very important. If you don't get expert in one of the domain is not going to help you. Second, saying that I know front end, I don't care about the back end, or I know back end, I don't care about the front end is not going to help you. Guys, things does not work in isolation. Things works, you call web application. You don't call front end application or the back end application. What we call is a web application, right? Web is a combination of both the stuff where you are expert at one and you know the other side of thing. Where if like Next.js talking about, you're not doing any backend heavy stuff over here, but deciding certain things, what I could do at backend and what I could do at front end and taking the right decision makes you a better developer instead of, I'm a front end developer, I won't touch any file which is written in a Node.js is not going to help. right? So that is something important, guys.
Interesting. I'll move on to the other question which I think was asked by anyone anonymous. You wanted certain kind of resources in case you have predominantly on system design. Do you have any recommendations?
uh, One thing, the if you have to check for the front end, I think there are 2 or 3 resources only for front end system design. So someone asked, basically, I went to LLD basically, and someone asked me the backend basically stuff on the LLD side of thing, and was talking about databases and whatnot, right? So similar kind of thing happened with me when I was joining Microsoft. I was giving interviews for different companies, and I went into the interview, and someone started asking, I won't mention the name. So someone started mentioning the high level design, HLD. And person was asking about sharding concept. Person was talking about databases concepts, lot of internals of basically, you can say server, messaging queue and whatnot. So I was having fair understanding. We had a discussion and we ended up into that. At the last, I just asked one thing. So I just asked, boss, you're a front end developer. I hope you work as a front end developer. He said, yes, he said, I'm a front end developer, senior front end developer in the company XYZ. So I said, have you ever used the concept that we just talked about? And he said, no, I haven't used, because I work on the front end and this is something which is a back end part. Then I said, boss, we had a discussion which is not related with your profile. So he ended up saying, because on internet, when you go and look for system design, you only have system design related to the backend. And hence, I don't know what to ask in the front end system design. I have to ask this. So the problem is not with candidate, basically. There are problem with the interviewers also, where they don't know basically what need to be asked. So don't get afraid because of their people who don't know what is the right expectation. Because what if someone asks you and they hire you on board, and you do horrible in the front end, because that is what you have to do, right? You ended up talking on something else which is not relevant with your you can say expertise or your work profile altogether. There is no point to just mug up something from the internet and go and just crack those interviews, because that is not going to help you things on your work, right? So that day, I think the interview might have got revived with the my question and might have explored certain things. So don't get upset or don't take things in the negative fashion. Things are evolving. People are understanding the benefit and the weightage on the front end side. And you see nowadays you have architect on the front end side as well. But I'm not saying you are very good at front end and you are dumb at back end altogether. That is going to make you an architect or a very senior person. No, that is not going to happen. So you have to have a understanding on the other side of thing and expertise on the one side, which is very, very important.
I'll quickly take, though there are a lot more questions, being honest, Chirag, I can see LinkedIn, I can see chats here, but allow one more question predominantly to come from Vempati. Vempati, I've just unmuted you to talk. If you want, you can share the question right away. You there, Vempati? So unmuting, then I'll go to Naveen. Naveen, you there?
Yeah, I am here. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Hi Chirag. My question was like, since on server side rendering, we are like putting all the components of server. So won't be it impact the infrastructure or the server cost, or it will increase the server size. So it will
So
be having impact on that as well, right? So how do we like choose like we should be a better how much we put on the server side, though it's we don't have any interactivity on that page. So how do we need to decide on that?
right. So there are multiple parameters. As you said, as I said, nothing is silver bullet, right? So because you may sometimes think about performance, but you get a hit on costing, right? You have to have a very large scale scalable system with a high configuration with a vertical or horizontal scaling depending on the scenario. Why do you want to do this? Ultimately, your goal was to provide a good perceived performance to the user. Now you have to decide what is something which is critical on your client, right? You try to focus on them and try to render those part importantly very efficiently on the client. That is one. You do server side rendering of critical part of your application. The things which will come on user interactivity, like tab change, scroll, some user interactivity, that can be taken care on the client itself. You don't have to do everything on the server. That is one, right? If there is nothing secret, security related or any major concern. So after your first load, by whatever happens within that page in terms of interactivity and getting things done, my recommendation is prefer the client side. In case there are things on the server, in the server also you have caching strategy where you are making a request to the server, but those are all cached requests. So comparatively, the cost or the amount of computation has to be taken on server is very less. So try to optimize in terms of right set of caching, doing only the relevant things on the server, not putting everything, because when you put things on the client, you are using distributed computing. When I say distributed computing, you have millions of users, you are using the bandwidth of millions of users instead of using on own single server to serve those all sort of requests on the server, single server. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. One more thing I would like to ask, like just you just mentioned about the caching thing, but on a dynamic content, we are not sure about that how much time the content will be the same or it's gonna change. So
That's a strategy. Again, as I said, you understand your system better. No one understand it well, right? If I say try to cache this for 1 day, is this may be valid for 10 people and may not be valid for another, you can say 990 users, right? What it meant by you understand your system better, there is a cache invalidation policies or revalidation policies as a configurations in all of these systems. Try to leverage best based on understanding your need, your business use cases.
yeah, got it. Yes.
Cool. Yeah. Great. Awesome, Chirag. I would love, and I'm pretty sure everyone would actually love to continue this session. As you mentioned, there's a lot of other content that you can talk and share. To be honest, the wisdom that you've built over the last a decade. But it was a pleasure, to be honest, Chirag, to join and basically listen to you and really learn. And I'm pretty sure everyone back in who's joined today have extremely learned a lot of new ways in terms of how exactly this can be developed. So thanks a lot for joining in, and I'm pretty sure that we will reach out to you again to have you again on board very soon.
Definitely. Thanks for connecting on this, because a lot of time you wanted to share a lot of knowledge to a lot of audience. It's just that reaching to the right place where you can reach out to the right audience is difficult. And I think Recro is one of the great way. If you are not basically connected or in the community of Recro, I will highly recommend people to join that, because eventually I see it's growing and eventually there is exponential growth happening. I can see in next couple of years. So with that, one request with everyone: if you learn something, you like something, please share on LinkedIn, on different platforms. Basically, what did you learn from this particular session and what do you like? This way, basically, it will help you and us basically both to basically get to know what's your thought, and so that we can bring something interesting in the upcoming sessions.
Awesome. I think that's an important piece of advice, because while you write, you clarify also, and it becomes a lot more clear to you as well. Thanks a lot for joining in. It was a pleasure to have you today.
Yeah, thanks a lot. See you guys some other day, some other platform, some doing some crazy stuff. Chalo
Awesome.
guys, see you then. Have a great weekend. Bye bye.